So, some more overall general reactions to the drama L.O.R.D, Critical World. The movies are not sequels, they are a retelling in a different way. Overall, one thing that really irked me, I'm starting off with everything that irked me with it, and then we'll get into the deeper things that take longer to talk about. Something that really irked me was the shifting for no good reason. Like, it was really weird how many times in this drama the Silver Priests themselves give somebody a task. That person is literally in the middle of the task. They are not done it, and the Silver Priests tell them to go do something else instead. And then there's how many times in the drama where the characters themselves are in the middle of something and they decide themselves to go off and do something else instead. Why? And this also, I didn't write it down, but this is also related to like another like shifting for no good reason. There's also walking for no good reason, traveling for no good reason. This is one of those dramas. There's constantly people moving without going anywhere. It's a travel drama, okay? It could be, how many times in this drama are people walking and walking and walking and walking and walking and walking and walking this drama? I mean, each episode is like 45 minutes long, and you literally have 30 minutes of people walking. They finally get to their destination. Somebody else is right there with them. Like, where did they come from and how'd they get there so fast? Beats me! And at the same time, kind of along those same lines, you have the time spent where in this drama? It's disconnected. It's oddly long, focused on things that didn't need that long. And there's so many overly dramatic and long, whatever even for things. To be more specific, it's important to the story, yes. But when you keep going back to that over and over and over and over and over again, this is kind of like a general, I'll get more specifically into my specific issue with this, because there's one character in specific that I have a big issue with this. They do that, and I'm like, this is so stupidly pointless. You're like reiterating this over and over and over and over again, and it was a very interesting plot point thing that had a deep impact on the story and on the character, and it could have been really interesting and really impactful, but because they spent so long on it, I'm like, are we done yet? Are we done yet? Are we done yet? Are we done yet? Never mind. And then you have the like long and dramatic, like over the what the, where there's more than one place, not too many, but at the same time enough, where they just kind of drag out someone's like, okay, there's a character on there, he literally doesn't feel pain. So what do they do to show me this? I spend 5 minutes watching him fight these beasts, and they're tearing him to pieces, and he's just continuing to fight because he doesn't feel the fact he's being torn to pieces. And they don't really just do this once. They do this more than once, and I'm like, got it. Got it the second time. Didn't need all 10 other times. And then there's that whole weird scene. It was like all these weird jerky over here and camera angle over here, and then that, and then this, and I'm like, why are you doing this to me? And then there's the pointless dumb things. There was so much repetitious dialogue. Like, as in, there were literally times, there's one point in particular that I'm thinking of where I'm like, is this just me, or did this just happen? They were literally talking about something, and I swear she said, blah, 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 so this. And he's like, blah, 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 so this. And she's like, blah, 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 so this. And he's like, oh, blah, 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 so this. I swear, within 5 minutes, they did it 4 times. Where they were like, everything, the point, dun 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 dun, we got there. But they did it 4 times. I'm like, she just said that. And he just said that. And she just said that. Again. Is this just really bad translations because this is a Chinese drama Is this just really bad translations? Or was the original dialogue really that bad? Because that was really bad. I'm pretty sure they did that more than once, where, like, sometimes I watch dramas and something is so blatantly, flippantly obvious to me. Like, it's so obvious, and yet, I thought all the characters knew that, and yet it turns out most of them didn't know that. But the way they were acting even implied that they did, because, like, it all fit. And then all of a sudden they go, oh, we didn't know that. And I was like, wait, what? I thought we all knew that, like, 10 episodes ago, and you only just figured this out. And then you get the reverse, where I didn't know this, and yet everybody in the show seems to know this. And I'm like, since when? How did I miss the memo? I'm the audience. I'm supposed to know things before you do. And yet... And, like, it was, like, really weird. There was more than once where it's, like, someone is asked a question, and either on purpose, they don't want to answer for some reason, so they're just avoiding answering, and then out of the blue, they just decide to answer the question after all. Or it felt like they were just doing the circle thing again, where, like, I mean, in one case, the guy was asked a question, and he gave them all this information that I'm like, that really didn't have much to do with anything, and they didn't ask about that. He gave them all that information while completely avoiding the question they asked. And the person that asked the question goes along with it. And then they go, oh, hey, by the way, and ask the same question again like this was the first time they asked it. And the character goes, oh, yeah, here's your answer. I'm like, hold on, what? They have a lot of dialogue issues in this one, like a lot. And I really honestly don't know whether it's all translation issues or whether the original dialogue was really that bad, because it was bad. It was kind of like The Walking. They're constantly walking, going nowhere. I swear they used the same set for like 10 different locations. More than once. So I'm like, this whole forest right now, like, I swear we've been here before, only we were going there at that time. Now all of a sudden we're going there. And then there's like another area, and I'm like, I swear we've seen this place before. Like, they used the same set for 5 different places. So many times. I'm like, what was your budget? And then you have the actions that started getting really pointless. Like the whole changing jobs in the middle of it. Like, everybody is like dead set on doing this, and then for no real good reason, they all of a sudden change their mind and go off and do that instead. Or you have where people are completely, just like with answering, they just don't want to do it, so they like avoid doing it. And that would be fine if at the same time they were preparing for it, because it's more like it's going to bring a lot of pain or a lot of whatever, so they really don't want to do it, but they kind of know that there's no way to really avoid it, so you think they'd be coming up with a plan. And then you get there, and they finally cave in, and they're going to do it, and there was no plan to make this any better. Closer to the end, like, there was more than once where something big and epic was happening, and yet characters that should have been there weren't. Like, that's awkward. And why weren't they there was even more awkward. It's kind of like in animes where someone's like, this person's about to die. It's like detrimental that we go and save them right now. And then we spend like 3 episodes with some random stuff that's got nothing to do with anything. And all the characters are like over here just la da da, skipping along, eating their candy. Oh yeah, that character was like 2 seconds away from death. We gotta go save him. So like super important stuff is happening over here, and like people are just over here. It happened more than once. And then you had the really dumb timing. There was twice where it was, in my opinion, specifically there was twice where it was really dumb timing. There was a character that they said, I can't remember when. There was more than once, and I don't remember how early they said it, where they said, okay, we're sort of getting into spoilers here, so there's this character that had a brother when he was younger. From the way it was set up, as far as I understand it, everybody thought that both brothers were dead. So the audience, me, you see that obviously this one brother, the older brother, lived. Because he's obviously still alive. He's a character in the show. And you find out fairly quickly who he is. Within good timing. That was well enough done to find out who he is and why he's doing what he is. That's fine. I can't remember how many times he brings up his brother. But he brings it up in a way like he was separated from his brother and doesn't know where his brother is. Maybe doesn't know whether his brother is alive or not. Okay, that's fine. But then, after something else happens, and we won't go there yet because that's a big spoiler, so we'll go into that a little bit later. After something else happens, spoiler, the younger brother, suddenly randomly appears in the story. And it's so random. I mean, really random how he comes into the story. The fact that he's flipping alive to begin with, who he is, where he was, like, he's just so out of the blue random. And yet, okay, the people that were keeping him alive, knowing that he's alive and where he was and all that stuff, and the girl that brought him along is fine. But the character that finds out that he's alive, I know he was in the middle of, moping about other stuff at that point, but his reaction to that was really weird. It's like, oh, look at that. It's the brother of this guy. And I'm like, oh, ha. Okay. And he's brought in really randomly, and then he's brought out really randomly, and then it's like, don't at the end, and like, oh, well, that was fine. But the whole way he was brought into the story was just so flippin' random. That felt more like, oh, you're supposed to be like, oh, he's still alive, and it was just like, oh yeah, here's the brother. And you're like, okay, that wasn't that supposed to be a little more epic than that? Because that was like a real haphazard flop. But how would, I don't know. And then there's the, like, really poorly timed of, like, the other guy that came into the story where you knew he was coming. But by the time he comes into it, he's, like, not necessary. And I'll have to stop there because that's going into characters that I disliked and why I disliked them. But that was really dumb timing for both of them. And then there's the overdone face crowd. And this is a big spoiler. The 7 lords, whose lord number 1 gets... Oh, because there was the previous lord 1, and then there's the current lord 1, and then there's the previous lord 1. Okay, so the current lord 1 is the overdone face crowd. This is something that shows should never do, and they like to do it, and it's awkward just about every time. Some shows are capable of doing it very well. This one did it very not well. And sometimes I swear they just like, they do it for like, because they want the actor to continue to be in the show, but because they took the character that actor was playing out of the show, they have to find some other way to bring them back into the show, so they, like, make them a different character. And I'm like, okay, if you had brought the current Lord 1 in, and he had the other guy's face, okay, fine. But when you bring him in and he has the other guy's face, and all 3 of his disciples have the other guy's face, so you've got 4 people with that same face. I'm like... Okay, so they had a reason for it. They do have a specific reason for why they all have the same face. To me, it was a really awkward reason because, like, there's the whole perfect vessel. This is getting into spoilers. This is actually fairly major spoilers, so watch out if you don't want major spoilers about it. Major spoiler being that the silver priests are trying to get themselves a body. They can't leave the crystal because if they do, they will die shortly. So they're trying to get a body to get out of the crystals. So they're trying to make themselves a perfect vessel, okay? So in the process of trying to make themselves a perfect vessel, from what I understand, there was 3 things they did. First, like, they cloned this one guy because for whatever reason, I'm not even sure why. I guess they liked his face because he didn't have the same power flow. So if it wasn't the power flow they were going for, I guess it was just the face. Okay, that's a little arrogant of the show to say that this guy's got the perfect face. He wasn't that cute. So they made a bunch of him, but at the one point the lady said there was 12 or 13. Or there were supposed to be 12 or 13 total. I'm like, you only ended up showing me 5 or 6 or something? So where were all the others? I don't get it. Because as far as I can tell, there's only the 4. There's the Lord and his 3 disciples. So where are all the others? That was really confusing to me. So these guys are part of the process of the perfect vessel. So they kept cloning because they were trying to make the perfect vessel and it wasn't working. So they tried something else and that also didn't work. So they tried something else and that's what worked. Or something like that. So that's why these guys all have his face. But that was just already really awkward and weird. I mean, really awkward and weird. To have 4 people suddenly walking around with the same guy's face. Especially when they're all completely blank and emotionless. And then they like... Because there's this mirror in the show. They all have their, like, there's these magical weapon things that they have. And this one guy has a mirror that can... Final Fantasy 9. That guy. It's a mirror that can, like, reflect you back. So you're fighting against yourself, pretty much. And this is what the good guys use against this guy. Because, spoilers, Lord 1 is a bad guy. So the only way they can beat him, because of the power that he has, the only way they can beat him is to get him to beat himself. So they use the mirror on him. So he jumps down. And the mirror brings out him. So you've got 2, the same face. And then all of the disciples come down. So we've got the original Lord and his 3 disciples, and then we've got the mirror of the Lord. So we've got 5 of the same face. And then, because these 3 disciples jump down, out of the mirror walks 3 more of the same face. So we have 8 of this same face. And then I skipped it, so I don't know exactly how long it was, but it was somewhere upwards of at least 3 minutes. A fight with these 8 of the same face fighting against each other. I cannot even begin to describe how awkward that was. Why did you do that to me? Why? I was just... I felt like it was one of those moments, you know, where idol dramas where they have to pay them by the minute and they just like, this face is so famous that they want to get as much of this face on there as possible to get people to come watch their show. So they literally make 8 of him and have him fight against himself. And I'm like, don't do that. If you're planning on making a show, don't do that. That was just, like, intensely over the top. I think I'm going to stop there because that's, like, 21 and a half minutes. We'll see. I don't know what any of this is going to look like once I'm done editing it, but I'm going to stop there because that's overall. And we're getting into deeper and deeper spoilers, in my opinion. So... next we get into specifics about characters, about why I hate them and why I love them, and specifics about what happened to each of the characters, which plays into loves and hates. So I'm going to stop that one right there. Thank you for watching. Bye.